My guest today is Victor Marx. He's a high-risk humanitarian with successful missions to Iraq, Syria, North Africa, and Southeast Asia, helping orphans and widows. Victor was severely abused and tortured as a child, and by the time he graduated from high school, his lifestyle was filled with drugs, fights, and theft. The discipline of military life and his faith help him recover from his traumatic childhood and empowers him to help others. He is a 7th degree black belt and holds the world record for fastest gun disarm. Victor, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm so glad that you're here, and I appreciate so much for everything that you've done, and thank you for your service. I can't say that enough.
Well, thank you for your support. It means a lot when people just acknowledge it. I mean, everybody active are veterans. We raise our hand. We volunteered to do it. So, just a thank you goes a long way.
Well, and I also wanted to ask you about being the fastest gun disarm. How did that come about?
Well, you know what? It's I started training, like 3 decades ago on this, and I just learned, and it's like any skill set, you can get better and better. So I started shaving off the time to where somebody could point a weapon at me, and in 0.8 of a second, I could disarm and pull out the magazine and have it pointed back at them. And it's been fun to do that and the double gun disarm. But what's interesting is as many millions of views, and some of your viewers or listeners will recognize, and they go, oh my gosh, that was actually him. We have hundreds of millions of views. What few ask, and I appreciate you asking, is, why did I learn? Why did I get that good? And it was from my childhood. I was put in a chair at 7 years old. My stepfather put a pistol to my head, and he would tap it to the side of my head and go, boy, if you ever tell anybody what I've done, I'll shoot you and tell the police that you killed yourself. So as a child, I kind of made a self-vow that one day no one would ever be able to hold a gun on me. And I would, I wanted to be empowered enough to where I wouldn't have the fear of being helpless or powerless in a situation. That's why I did it. And I'm certainly thankful to God that he turned it around, to really as a skill set and something I used to glorify him and get people's attention for the bigger story of, he redeemed my life and he's given me a mission to help others who've suffered trauma.
And I love that word that you used, empower. You took it upon yourself to get empowered, and now you're helping human trafficking survivors become empowered. How did you get into rescuing human trafficking victims?
Yeah. I would say one, my biological dad was a pimp and a drug dealer. So, I saw firsthand, had knowledge of women being used and where's the mindset and mentality behind it that once people get into that realm, it's really a form of brainwashing girls to feel like, hey, I'm in control. They feel empowered that they can control their life by charging money for sex or, whatever it is. And then the pimps who go, well, I'm just giving them an opportunity for income. There's a whole twisted, it's all up in the mind. Everybody thinks it's about the body, but it's about the mind when people enter and want to stay in that lifestyle. Now, for those who are kidnapped, captured, like we've helped a number of girls and women escape from ISIS who were captured, turned into sex slaves. As a matter of fact, just last week, we were an operation we were part of, 9 women who were captured by ISIS and forced into sex slavery and all that, and end up being impregnated and having children, 12 children. We helped get the kids and the moms out of Syria, and they're currently in one of our safe houses in Iraq. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm getting so emotional.
I can't even imagine. I can't fathom what you go through that kind of mindset, you got to be strong. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for what you're doing. I
Well, it's darkness, and it does affect you. I mean, those of us who are in the space, either recovering, rescuing, or helping with trauma relief or medical or whatever, it does affect you. I mean, or else you get super hard, and then all you want to do is shoot people in the face who've hurt kids and women. Um, and
okay, let me stop you there, because
okay,
I was telling my husband about you and your background and how you're rescuing human trafficking victims.
yep.
And he said, well, why don't they just kill them?
Mhm.
If you know who these bad guys are, why don't you do that, Victor?
Well,
Why
I
don't
never
you just
said.
go, why don't you just go, nobody's looking?
Well, I never said that we don't.
Okay. Okay, good.
So
Well, so
I will say this, that depending on the country and the situation,
yeah.
sometimes it's better. Like if people just go to our website, victormarx.com, and view the Nora story. Nora was an orphan who was being abused by a very wealthy guy in Cambodia, which is, we're helping to try to change things there with some other good people, but he ended up trying to kill her. And he's an orphan girl, a teenager. He pours battery acid on her.
Ah,
Uh, he rapes her, of course, for the last time. Tries to cut her head off, but cuts her hand off, and all of this, and um, left her for dead. And it's a miraculous story that she survived, and we actually recovered her, and then got her 3 life-saving surgeries, protected her from men who came back to kill her. It's unbelievable, and yet I gave her my word we would find the guy, because she would live in fear the rest of her life in Cambodia. And I said, uh, if you just trust me, because God's on our side, we will find this very evil man. And it took us a year, and we did. And we actually have the film. We have footage of the capture, and we had one of our teams there, and we were tracking him, and it was pretty dynamic, the capture. But now he's in prison. We're making him give restitution to her financially, and could we have smoked him in a heartbeat? We could have. This guy could be fish food or fertilizer, and yet the reality is that too rough. And the reality
oh,
is,
no,
my
I like
my
that.
staff's laughing. None of this is incriminating. But the reality is, I told people, because a year looking for someone who's untouchable in that region, uh, people started saying, "Hey, boss, just let's just send in a smoke team. We'll do this, dude." I said no, because he should be captured and publicly, just like Jesus said, he made a public display of forces of darkness.
Mm.
So now everybody knows who he is, that he was captured and he couldn't get away with his crime. That is what we want other pedophiles and abusers to lay in bed, looking under their bed for us, right? Going, oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
being
he
scared
just
of you.
being scared that there are good people out there that will not stop looking, and we will capture and stop you.
You know, this past year with the pandemic and everything that's been going on, it just seems like I'm doing this all the time. And my neck is sore. Like I'm
Yep.
shaking my head at everything. And I cannot believe the evil, that there are such evil people out there that would do this to children, to a human being. And I don't know how you stay strong and do what you have to do, but God bless you for doing that. And you are definitely a spiritual warrior.
Thank you. And I would say that's the source of our strength. You know, one, I'd say my faith in God. Second, my bride. You know, uh, she is probably one of the most courageous people I know. And, I've been to Iraq, Syria, gosh, 14 times now. We're prepping to go back um, to help more because we actually have safe houses there and everything. But I remember the first time I went into Iraq, took a team, and I took a high speed former Delta, MARSOC guys, GRS, CI, right? A team together to do what we're going to do, plus some other folks. But my wife tells me, she goes, honey, I'm praying and I feel like I'm supposed to go with you. Yeah. And I was like, no, you're not. And she goes, well, I think you ought to ask the Lord because he's telling me I should go. Of course, we argue. We got, we were fussing pretty good about it because we're talking about life and death.
Yeah.
So I told her, I said, why do you want to go? Because the mission was to help recover 30 girls who had been captured by ISIS, who were suicidal, and help them with the trauma. And this is what my wife said. My little bride, my sugar, I call her my sugar. She goes, honey, I know you're going to find those girls.
Mm.
And when you do, you can't hug them, but I can. And I said, you're willing to risk your life to hug girls? She goes, they'll need hugging for what they've been through. One girl was raped 15 times before lunch. I mean, the horrendous abuse, the level of evil is beyond what people could imagine. And here my wife was willing to step into that. And on top of that, she said, honey, what's the worst that can happen? We die. And I said, yes, we die. ISIS is around. I mean, she goes, well, then don't we win? Because if we die, we get to go to heaven. And she really believes this. It's not, it's beyond just knowing. She believes it. And she also just says, God has the number of our days. And it's been her strength and partnership and camaraderie to where, man, we've led teams into Syria. We've had ISIS. I've had ISIS shooting at me, dropping mortars, stuff you just can't even imagine. And my wife is just like praying, believing God, and just fearless because of the strength of God. So I think if we can do it over there, we want to encourage Christians to do it here, against, lesser things, but requires courage. One thing we're big on is protecting your marriage.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, start at home. And if people really want to help, and I guarantee you, you're not going to hear this anywhere else. Because I just finished speaking with someone about something else regarding sex trafficking. But here's the reality: if people here in America really want to see sex trafficking diminish in America, it's not about guys kicking in doors and doing rescues. We have to stop it before it begins. One of the most horrific things I've ever heard a pimp say was he thanked the dads and the stepdads and uncles for preparing the girls for them. Abuse must stop in the home first. Sexual abuse, molestations in the home.
And
Second,
how do you think this pandemic, the lockdowns have affected?
It went through the roof. It went through the roof. This was one of the most horrible things that could happen, both for abuse, drug and alcohol addiction, and it was avoidable. And that's why I tell Christians and conservatives, stop complaining and take action.
Yeah.
Because once you do an assessment, then what do you like in what we do, developing mission plans and strategies, you have to have a solution. And people need to start at their very base level of being on school boards, getting on your city council, mayor. You have to get involved. And believe me, I get cross-eyed when Christians tell me, well, Jesus wasn't into voting. And I'm like, oh my gosh. First of all, there wasn't voting back then, you idiot. And if people really want to stop and see sex trafficking diminish, I mean, people who have really good hearts and you don't need to come to Iraq with us or Cambodia or work with us when we are helping U.S. Marshals or law enforcement here in the U.S. We're getting pedophiles. Pray about fostering a kid. Pray about adopting a kid out of the foster system. It's a machine. It is a machine. And that's the hard work. So a lot of people complain and talk, and I just go, well, I understand that, but once you reach your assessment phase, what is the do? What is the solution?
Yes.
And
That's what
have
people
a
want to
plan.
know. How can
Yep.
we help? How
Yes.
can we help you do what you do?
Thank you. There's two things I tell people right off the bat. One, pray. That's not a cliche of some ministry deal, because I'm a regular guy. I got a house, I got a little ranch house, and that's on a dirt road, and I drive a truck. Okay. So it's, I'm not the guy flying in the, multi-million-dollar jets. Although if somebody wants to donate one to us, we will get to our targets quicker. But I would say just pray.
Mm.
And the second is, of course, give support financially. But they don't have to be big fundraisers. Just do a little bit every month.
Yep.
Because here's what I tell people: prayer makes it possible. Because we do the impossible oftentimes. We just got a pedophile here in the U.S. last week. And one of our team members, he's new to the team. You know what his response was after coming out of the guy's house? And we captured everything and him and all, blah, blah. He goes, straight out of the Silence of the Lambs. That was his response. That's how evil it was. So
And
we tell
and
people, yeah.
the concept that there are people like that in our neighborhoods here amongst us.
Yes.
And I mean, it just breaks my heart for these men, women, children, girls and boys who are victims of human trafficking, especially what's going on with the border. I mean, does
Right.
that?
We're heading down to the border very soon because we're doing trauma relief for children right now. And I'll say this: there's three things: the prayer, because you can't overcome evil without God's help. It doesn't matter. Second thing, a level of support. But the third, be prepared through learning and understanding what it's about. So therefore you won't be paranoid. I tell people, in your towns, in your cities, in some of your houses of worship, you walk among rapists, murderers, and perverts. And I'm all for helping anybody because of God's redemptive power. But don't be ignorant to the fact that the majority of men, even in churches, struggle with pornography. And I'm not talking about some, therapeutic approach. I'm talking about serious issues. Like I had a guy one time who, this was years ago, but every time me and my wife walked in church, this guy would make a beeline to give my wife a big hug. He just loved hugging my wife. And she's not hard to look at. And I can appreciate his appreciation of her. But I knew he was doing it with dishonorable intentions. So I told my wife one time, I said, hey, and the deal is he was a pastor on staff at a church. And I told my wife, I said, honey, watch when we walk in, this guy's going to make a beeline. She's like, oh, Victor. I said, no, because, sure enough, this guy, he was clearing people to get to us. Right before he went to give her a hug, I stepped in front and said, you need a hug? Bring it in. And then later,
and did he hug you?
Reluctantly, yes. But you know what? Later I called him in a parking lot. Said, "Hey, I just want to tell you something. I know you're having dishonorable thoughts about my wife. That's why you want to." He goes, "Well." I said, "Nope." I said, "Don't." I said, "I may be slow, but I'm not stupid. There's a big difference. Strong back, weak mind. But I know when someone's, you need to treat all women honorable, including my wife, in your thoughts and look." And he goes, well, he started, I just said, next time I see you looking at her in a way that's unhonorable, doesn't matter where we are, I'm going to punch you right in your nose. I'm going to bloody your nose, buddy. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, do you think I'll do it? He's like, yeah, you're crazy. I said, well, crazy with a K, but, and sure enough, 6 months later, that man was cheating on his wife with someone in the church, and he had to resign his position and all that. So, and again, I just think people have to be aware. Women, you can't just dress the way you want.
No, and I think I feel sorry for teenagers these days. Well, parents of teenagers, and some of the clothing that I've seen them wear. Why wear anything at all? I
Right.
mean, and you talk about being aware. We had, well, when my son was young, we had a death threat against him because we're hunters. We
Right.
choose to eat meat. So
Right.
they wanted to, put an arrow through my son. And so from that moment on, my whole world changed. And I learned more about
Good for you.
self-protection, and because you are not messing with me or my family.
Don't
And I
touch
think
Mama Bear.
yeah,
Don't get
that's
Mama Bear
me.
lit up.
And I think that's really important for women. I mean, I wouldn't recommend everybody, getting a death threat, but it does wake you up. I got another one when we went to the White House and had dinner with President Trump, and I posted photos. I had death threats that are on file now with the FBI that are real serious.
Right.
And it makes you, it makes you wake up. It makes you look and you feel differently. I got goosebumps now thinking about it. You probably get that all the time when you're on missions, and how important is your instinct to you?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. First of all, I'm into saving plants. So save plants and eat an animal. The way people are these days, and the increase of evil, there's this balance of, we do not have to live in fear. The Bible says God's not giving us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1:7. And we've had death threats. I've had a beheading threat from ISIS folks. Now, granted, we're grateful in that particular situation. In 72 hours, we found the guy because it was through the internet. We tracked him and put together a counterterrorism package, and he was picked up within 72 hours. That's why I tell people, don't Google where I live. But here's the deal. It's healthy for women. And we do training out here in Colorado. We have a leadership training center. This weekend, we're bringing in former trafficked women who are trafficked, and we will work with them on situational awareness, spiritual, confidence, emotional training, right? Because they've struggled with psychological issues. But we'll do jujitsu on the ground, teach them how to use a blade, and we'll bring them to the shooting range and teach them how to shoot. That really empowers a woman.
Yeah.
And I think we need to even start with our daughters, right? So yes, the problem in America, it's not ISIS. It's the lack of men in a home. I believe with all my heart to help guide this. But we have to work with our daughters, our granddaughters, our women, because to make hard targets, not simple targets. And the last thing I would say on that is we need to teach our kids situational awareness and then the confidence to know when a guy's trying to get weird. And I'm not just talking about some van with a, crazy guy slide the door open going, hey, here's some candy. Help me look for my dog. I'm talking about the boyfriend who's slick, the guy in high school who's talking to her, and will get her to drink a little bit, lower her resistance, and then compromise her beyond her. We just read today, North Carolina is trying to pass a bill. You ready for this?
No.
That will allow, this is horrific.
I didn't.
That once a person is engaged in some sexual activity, they can't say no anymore.
What? That doesn't.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. It's
So
they've given up their consent to stop once they've engaged in some type of sexual activity. That is a green light for rapists.
It just blows my mind. Like I said, like the whole day, if I ever turn on the TV, and we very rarely do anymore, I'm shaking my head all the time. I don't believe what is going on right now, but there's no question. This is a spiritual war that we're fighting.
It is
now more than ever. I think this has really brought more people closer to God and reading the Bible. And for that, I guess we could be grateful. But Victor, I promise you I'd get you out of here on a certain time.
I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm not in a rush. This is good.
Well, I don't want to take advantage of that, but I would love to interview you more often because I feel like this is something that people really need to hear, obviously. And like I said, this was kind of new to me. I mean, I knew about, prostitution, but heard a little bit about trafficking, but it is so prevalent in every city,
Yeah.
all over the world. Unbelievable.
Every
It breaks my heart and blows my mind. So what can people do besides helping you? You had started to talk about in their communities, get involved in school board. And the problem with people getting in politics is what one side says about the other side. It tends to wear you down. And
Sure.
the lies, people
Sure.
believe the lies. There's all sorts of things out there about my husband that aren't true.
Of
And but what they do is they keep repeating it over and over and over and over. And then, oh yeah, the truth is buried in page 20 of the newspaper or whatever. So how do you build up that empowerment within you and also encourage people to get involved in politics and stop this insanity?
Yeah, we need people to become courageous, critical thinkers. Courageous, critical thinkers, and that's where you don't believe everything you read or see. You listen, but then you put it through a little litmus to go. Well, let me check the sources. And by and large, people in America are lazy. They just tell me what I want to hear.
Well, that's how we got to where we are now. We've become lazy. Half of us haven't voted ever.
Right.
And we just go, oh, what are we going to do about it now? And now with this, this election and everything we know that went on, it's waking people up.
And that's a very good thing. I would say this because we didn't discuss this, but this has been a time where you really see Christian leaders, pastors and leaders and musicians, you find out what they really believe, and some of them use Christianity as a cloak to still vote for things. I mean, killing children. I mean, if our country, even Christians just understood you're worried about, responsible hunting for controlling herds and responsible, but yet you have no passion about protecting babies, full-term babies. You know, how off is this? So people need to start asking their pastors and spiritual leaders, what do you believe? Not take for granted that this is a very practical thing. Start with there. Almost like you would talk to a politician. What do you actually believe? Put it in writing, because believe me, a lot of these men who for years, and they have big radio stations, they're actually very leftist, liberal leaning, not conservative values until you push them and they say, oh, okay, well, or they try to hide it. And I called a lot out on social media in a respectful way. But I had one pastor in a very large church contact another guy and say, you need to tell Victor Marx, if you know that guy, to call me and apologize. And he goes, for what? He goes, I lost 400 people from our church. And he said, why? He goes, well, Victor put me in that position where I had to kind of give a positional statement. I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? We should know.
Yeah.
So start there. And then this courageous critical thinking, we do a daily intelligence brief that we send to, we're over 70,000 people that get it every morning. And that's my team of analysts that comb through the news, analyze what's true and false, and then present it in a single email drop. And I would tell people, sign up for that. Right now it's free, but they got to sign up quick. Victor Marx with an X.com/brief. And
I signed up for it.
There you go. Bless your heart. But isn't it nice to be able to open that up and go, oh, okay, here are the top stories. Here's what's true. Here's that was a rumor.
You cannot believe what is on mainstream media. And I feel sorry for people who do get their news from those, alphabet soup companies, and they don't do that, like what you were saying, critical thinking for themselves. They believe everything they see, and how they can't how they can't see. They don't have eyes to see, Victor.
Right.
And that's what we have to pray for, that they have eyes to see and ears to hear, because they're being fed a line of things that images that are spun, and it's out of control. And it kind of pretends like, what's good is bad. And
for sure.
Everything's upside down in this world right now.
And that's actually what the Bible says. In the last days, people would call good evil and evil good. You'll get wrapped around an axle if you're just watching the news. You'll get torqued so quick, it'll rob you of your peace and your joy. And that's why I say keep the peace. Keep your own personal peace. Don't let anything come in that will ratchet you. Be selective what you hear. And then remember, ultimately, this would be the last thing I would encourage people. Ultimately, this is a battle between good and evil.
It really is.
Do you read or listen to scripture? You should. I just tell people, the most important thing is to read the word of God or hear it or listen to worship. You got to keep your spiritual person, built up, however that looks, right? And then you're ready for the day. And remember, God has placed us here on this timeline of eternity for a very specific reason. You're doing what you're called to do. You're being a voice that's being heard. You're using your platform. You've got a great following. And it's not for selfish ambition. It's for a greater good. And I appreciate that, because there are a lot of people who as my wife says, they're just selfish. They stay selfish versus going, Lord, you put me here. You've given me that. What can I do for your glory? Yeah. And that's including using our skill sets, whatever space, whatever lane he puts us in, from, the music industry to politics to business, whatever. Let's just glorify God, live lives of integrity and solid character. And that we're missing these days. But so I'm excited. We'll get down there and visit with y'all in person.
You should. You guys should come and shoot. My husband isn't the fastest gun disarmer, but he's pretty darn quick.
Oh yeah, no, Ted's got great skill, and we'll do some motion too. We'll let him teach me how to. Do
you hunt?
We do. We've traveled so much; it's hard. So all I need is an invite to a simple little hunt, and I'd be there in a heartbeat.
And do you shoot a bow and arrow? Because
right now we're working on recurve and
good for you.
My wife keeps saying, honey, you got to fill the freezer with some meat. I said, okay.
Well, let me come on down to Texas. We got the animals. Victor, I feel like I'm a Christian in a rock and roll world, but I think you are. And so are a lot of people. The rock and roll world, meaning this crazy world in which we live. Yeah. And we find ourselves, it doesn't seem right. And I've always said that I feel like an unlikely messenger. I mean, my background is I've been a fitness instructor for 40 years, and I've written a few books, and I never felt like I really belonged to the rock and roll industry. Like don't tell anybody. Promise you won't tell anybody?
I won't.
I didn't know any of my husband's music when I met him.
Right.
And he knows that. Sometimes I'll hear things and I'm like, who did that? And he's like, I did. I'm like, oh, I feel like God put me here, and maybe I have this, platform for a reason, and that is to help people and to educate people. I've had a lot of people come to my Facebook page and say, I just had to check out and see who Ted Nugent's wife was.
Of course.
But I stayed because of your message.
Of course. Yep.
So that's why I'm here. And you brought up something and I'm going to let you wrap it up with this. But my background is in health and wellness. What do you do to stay healthy?
Thank you. Well, my wife has a fitness background as well, and she was actually Miss Fitness USA. So awesome. She was the first one. She says, she was in wooden clogs and a potato sack and during the competition. back in 1923, she says.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Nutrition is the most important. Sleep is critical, and then managing your stress, because stress is a silent killer.
Yeah.
And you know, I it's a passion of ours that we're about to come out. I mean, actually, very quickly with a supplement line for sleeping and for energy.
I was just going to say, what do you do to shut that down at night? How do you do that?
Yeah, shutting the brain down is hard, especially like, this morning by 10 o'clock, I had received communications from Cambodia, Syria, regarding Syria, uh, Burma, from the jungle, and Iraq by 10 o'clock this morning. And sometimes the communication comes in from, 1 a.m. to 5. So, sleep is important, decompression, but loving your spouse is critical, because if you go to bed angry, upset, or not connected, it's bad. So we're very intentional on loving each other. We believe in a healthy, good relationship. We limit the negative, like friendships, and we compartmentalize, because I mean, you guys during the spotlight, how many people will come to you to use you for something, or they want to touch the magic or whatever. It's like, so we keep those stuff separate. And my wife loves listening to Bible studies at night.
Oh, does she have the Pray app? I
Uh,
use the Pray app.
she doesn't have that one, but
Oh,
she listens to like just certain Bible studies we can share.
well,
But
that's
it's fun.
nice.
It's fun because we want to go to bed with the Word of God saturating our mind. And then in the morning, she's up. She serves me coffee every morning before I get out of bed, this woman. And she sits there with her Bible and her journal, and she'll
Mm,
draw down from the Lord.
mm.
And that sets our day, because we know we're going to have conflict. We know we're
Yeah.
going to have
Yep.
hard time, and we expect it, right? When you don't expect it, and God, it's so important for people to build resiliency in their life. That's getting hit and getting back up and going, yeah, I just got knocked down. I don't care what it is: failure, sin, rejection, betrayal. Okay, boom, I get back up. This is part of
Yeah.
it. And remember, we're fighting the battle against good and evil.
But that's hard for a lot of people. Once they get knocked down, they don't know how to get back up, and they don't have a good support system around them. But one of the things that I encourage people to do is to find the thing that makes their heart sing. So what you're doing all day long, and you're focused on, helping rescue human trafficking victims, which is amazing. I think there's no greater activity right now these days, especially now with what's going on at the border. But your mind is constantly going. And what I like to do is just shut down the TV, spend time with my dogs.
Yes.
And just focus on them. I throw the darn ball 100 times for my German Shepherd. I can't throw it enough. And I got to be all in, 100% all in those moments. And those are the little things that overall make a big difference.
Right. We talk about being busy but balanced.
Yeah.
And because people say you're too busy. Well, but we're balanced with it.
Yeah.
We work out. We both work out together. I'm in a phase right now where I like swimming.
Ooh, I love to swim.
Yeah. So it was funny because it was like 63 degrees a couple of weeks ago after a big snow blizzard. And I was out there going, whew, okay, keep going, son.
You went swimming outside?
Oh, yeah. Because doing laps, in the snow, it was fun. Good for circulation. But,
well, good for you. Well, we'll have to have you guys come down, and we'd love to share a campfire with you. As my husband always says, it sounds like you have an amazing wife. I can't wait to meet her and you. And thank you so much, Victor. God bless you. I hope and pray that you are safe and
Thank you.
all of your missions are 100% successful. And I'm going to link all of your info to this interview.
Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all and what you do and what you stand for. And we look forward to getting you up here at the Leadership Training Center. We'll do some training with some Delta guys. And I'll tell you a little secret. There's actually female Delta operators in this world
Nice.
that few know of. So it's pretty fun. But we appreciate y'all and God bless you. I look forward to visiting with you again.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Please share this because you never know who might need to see and hear it. See you next time.